Today is Wednesday, November 1st, 2006. We are at the Meyer Library on the campus of Missouri State University. We are interviewing Mr. Dale Moore. Interviewing is Megan Hickman and Dave Bowen. Cameraman is Matt Ternes, and also in attendance is Josh Brown. For the record, Mr. Moore, please state your date of birth.
June 4th, 1950.
Okay. And what branch of the military did you serve in?
United States Navy Reserve.
Okay. And what is your rank?
Came out as E4, radioman, third class.
Okay. And where did you serve?
On active duty, I served in Vietnam from February of 71 to May of 1972, and then as a reservist, I served, of course, active duty training and a lot of other places. But active duty was actually in Vietnam.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, to start off, what made you want to join?
Well, to be real honest with you, I joined in December of '69, and the Vietnam War was going full steam ahead at that point in time, and I thought that if I was going to wind up, and the draft, of course, was going on, I didn't particularly want to be drafted, so I joined the Navy so I wouldn't have to go to Vietnam.
Oh.
And I went to Vietnam anyway.
And as you're starting your military experience, what was your boot camp training like?
I trained at Great Lakes, Illinois, and it was the coldest, most miserable experience I've ever had in my life. It was bitter cold at the Great Lakes, and I think I went for my training in, I want to say it was in the early part of '69, like January, February, and that's about the bitterest, coldest time of the year when you're up at that part of the world. But it was a great experience. Learned a lot.
Yeah. Did you have any big personalities with you in your training, or people who went with you to Vietnam that you were with in your training?
Well, of course, everybody's got everybody's personality in their own way. In boot camp, the purpose of boot camp is to reduce the personalities and turn everybody into a sailor or a Marine or a soldier or whatever the case may be. So, and they have a pretty good, still to this day, have a pretty good way of doing that, teaching you the way to survive, the way to do what you're supposed to do your training and do it right. So I don't know that I was in with any personalities that stick out. Of course, everybody remembers names of people that you were in with that you remember. But yeah, everybody's pretty much a sailor.
Really? Do you remember any predominant instructors that you had that?
I do. I certainly do. My drill instructor was a very enormous man. His name was Skinador, and that was his name. That was his last name. HM1 Skinador. He was a Native American. I believe full-blooded Cherokee or almost a full-blooded Cherokee, and he was a mountain of a man, and he was the drill instructor. And by any definition, he was an intimidating drill instructor. I mean, he was absolutely, if there was a personality or a character that you would see in a movie or think of, like in the movie Platoon, he was much like that. He wore that hat down, cocked down real tight. And you never ever looked him in the eyes, and it was an interesting experience. I will tell you that when I went into boot camp, I was probably 2 years older than everybody else that was in boot camp. So those that came into boot camp at the same time that I did, I'd already been to college, for example, didn't have particularly good experience, was asked to come back when I got serious, which is why I joined the Navy. And but so I was about 2 years, year and a half, 2 years ahead of everybody else in there. Didn't make any difference in the way I was treated, but it was kind of interesting to see differences, in age. Just a couple of years would make during boot camp.
Can you tell me about the motions that you took leaving boot camp? Did you stay in the States for a while, or were you just shipped off immediately?
No, actually, after boot camp, I went to. I had been prior to boot camp. I had spent some time in radio and television as a civilian working in radio and TV. So I had kind of had a communications background.
Mm-hmm.
So when they did the testing in boot camp, they said, well, it's a natural for you to do something in the communication field. So when I graduated, when I got out of boot camp, I was sent to, and most everybody is sent to some kind of advanced training. I went to radioman school in San Diego, California. So I went from as cold as you can get to San Diego, California. I had about a month off, I think, before I started radioman school. And I went to radio school in San Diego. I was there, I want to say it was right at 6 months. I learned, I had never typed in high school, never had a typing class. I learned to type. I learned the international alphabet and Morse code during that entire time, and they teach it to you simultaneously. So I went through a training program that taught me how to type, learn Morse code, plus learn the international alphabet and all the different things that you need to know about radio systems in the Navy. At that time, that was, I mean, it's satellite now, but so there were a lot of different things to learn. So I learned that in radioman school, and then after I graduated from radioman school, then I had another couple of weeks off, and then I shipped out to go to Vietnam.
Where did you leave from?
Actually, I left from San Francisco. I came back to Springfield, spent some time with the family, and then I flew to San Francisco, processed in at a place called Treasure Island. It's anything but Treasure Island, I can tell you. But I remember one of the most interesting experiences that I had was I was sitting at a bus stop waiting for the bus to take us on to Treasure Island. I'd gotten off the airport, and I'm sitting there with a couple of other sailors who were going to Treasure Island with me to process out. And as we were sitting there, the two guys, I can't remember their names now, but they both said to me, we're not going to do this. We're leaving. We're going to Canada. Do you want to go with us? And back then, if you follow the history of the Vietnam War, a lot of people went across the border. And I must tell you that I sat there and I thought about it. And I got up and I walked around the bus stop there and I sat back down. And they said, we're going to Canada. As far as I know, they went to Canada. And I said, no, I think I better go do this because I don't know that I want to. First of all, I've obligated to something here and I intend to do it. Like it or not, I'm going to do it. But it's just what I've got to do. But as far as I know, they went to Canada. I never saw them again after that. Never saw them on the base as we processed out to leave the country.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they went to Canada.
How did your family react to you joining and then the reality of you leaving?
Well, during the Vietnam War, it's like any war. It's like Iraq today or Afghanistan. There's always, a fear and a concern. That's just a natural part of that. Probably scarier today for a family that's sending somebody to Iraq and Afghanistan than it was to Vietnam. Vietnam is bad, but I think that it's probably more scary today for families because, you got so much that goes on that you read about and see in the news about the IEDs and all the things that happen to those. You just don't know where it's going to come from. It's hard to defend yourself. At least in Vietnam, you had a pretty good sense of who the enemy was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not as much guesswork. So, I don't think we spent a lot of time over there being that concerned. I can't recall ever really being afraid about being in Vietnam. And I was up and down the rivers all the time. I was never consciously. It's there. It could happen. But I'd hate to be a soldier or a sailor today because it's just a different environment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the family was. They were concerned. That's just a natural part of doing business.
Sure. When you did enter Vietnam, what was the most shocking aspect? Was it the weather or the civilian life, the food? Or?
Well, when I went overseas to Vietnam, I'm from Mount Vernon, Lawrence County. So I was born and raised here. I'd never really been out of the state of Missouri. So to go to Illinois, first of all, the boot camp was a big deal. And California, my God, California. But, to actually get off in a foreign country, I took it all in. It was very odd. When we arrived in Vietnam, I didn't really get a sense that I was in a war zone until they told us we couldn't get off the airplane because the airbase was under a mortar attack. So we had to sit on the plane for 2 hours maybe before we could get off. So I thought, this is kind of an interesting change. I'm just getting there. I'm not even off the airplane yet. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that it was, particularly that I had a sense that it was. I mean, it was just like new job, going to do a job kind of thing.
Really? When you were more involved in Vietnam, did you have a lot of contact with civilians? Did you get to see the way that they were reacting to your presence there?
Oddly, not so much in Vietnam as we would get frequent R&R excursions, and we'd go up to Hong Kong or to Japan. In fact, I was officially home ported out of Japan, out of Yokosuka, Japan, but I spent very little time there because our unit spent all of its time down in the Mekong Delta and up the rivers to Saigon and back. So where I really got a sense of the culture was when I would go to those places. But Vietnam itself, there was not much meeting the civilians. I mean, in Saigon, yeah, you could a little bit, but you didn't get out. I didn't anyway, and spend a whole lot of time roaming around in Saigon. I didn't particularly care for the town. Just didn't care for wandering around there. But now, Hong Kong and Taipei, Taiwan, and I've always said I could actually move and retire and live in Hong Kong. One of the neatest cities on the planet is Hong Kong. And I love Tokyo, love Japan, love the Philippines. So I got to see some things that culturally were different. So yeah, but not Vietnam directly.
Did you get to become pretty close with the people that were in your unit?
Oh yeah, we were a small group. It was a very, very small. In fact, it was called a ship, but it was a baby ship. It was a much smaller. An LST, what was called, flat bottom boat that we could land right on the beach, open up the doors.
Isn't that where they deployed people off of?
Yeah, we did a lot of troop transporting, and we'd unload jeeps and ammunition, and helicopters could land. We had a huge deck that helicopters could land on. So you might have 2 helicopters at a time. We would be servicing the fuel, or they'd be bringing in prisoners, picking up prisoners, dropping off mail. I mean, just ending up. It was kind of a maintenance support kind of a role that the ship played. It was a small crew, very small crew. Yeah.
I know when we read the book and stuff in Vietnam War, they talked about those boats. Like, how big were they? How many people could you fit on there?
On the LSTs,
yeah.
The Windham County that I was on was actually a ship that was, I think it was built I think the keel was laid down. I used to know the history well. It's been 30 years since I thought about it. I think it was built in 45, 44, something. So it was a kind of a World War II vintage ship. In fact, it was the last of the old 1100 series, and then they went to I think I was on the 1170. The 1171, I think, or the 1172 was a much, much larger ship. But it was we had a crew on there maybe 40 people total, that many. And you could, and the tank, what was called the tank deck, which was the inside of the ship, you could put a couple hundred Marines in there, sardine style, and then on the deck, and then sleep them on the deck up above. But it wasn't a huge ship by any definition. Not large. Maybe the size of and this is a guess, but it's probably the length of a small destroyer, maybe, and a lot wider, of course, because of what its mission was.
So you would say that like your main job, like while you were there, was just like delivering supplies and stuff like that. You guys were just going like kind of up the inlets in the river.
Yeah, I went up and down the Mekong Delta, and then we'd swing out and come, and we'd be in support of. You got to remember there during the Vietnam War, a lot of the war was done offshore. Mm-hmm. We would be there in support of a battle group, or of an aircraft carrier, the Kitty Hawk, or one of the one of the old battleships that they had, the New Jersey or whoever was, so we might do what's called an attachment, and we'd attach to that group. But
you were more on patrol.
Yeah, we didn't spend a lot of time at anchor ever. You didn't want to do that much, particularly if you had a bunch of munitions on board, or you just didn't want to be a sitting duck. So we moved a lot or we would never anchor at the same place. And at night, if we were off the Mekong Delta, we'd always anchor far enough out so that somebody couldn't swim out, put a mine on your ship or something. We'd light up the perimeter of the ship, all of them would, with lights, and you'd see down to the, so you could see if somebody was swimming up under you, kind of a thing.
What do you think was maybe your favorite moment of being in the war, your proudest moment? Anything that you did?
I'll tell you, and absolutely no disrespect to anybody who was over there, but I really enjoyed myself over there. And that's funny for Vietnam veterans to say, because there's a lot of bad stuff. But I really enjoyed my time over there. And I think it's because I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about cultures that I would have never otherwise come into contact with. So I'd say as far as a proud moment, I mean, being part of that experience and trying to help contribute to it, it's not much fun to feel like you're part of a war that you kind of lost.
Yeah.
I don't think we won anything there. I don't think I guess I don't know that we really succeeded in doing anything, to be honest with you. And that's kind of, if you're going to go do something, you ought to either do it and do it right or not do it at all. But I don't have any regrets about any of that. I've got some friends that I've kept in contact with that became obviously very close friends. That some I haven't seen except by talking on the phone, emails that I haven't seen since we left over there. But we've stayed in close contact ever since. Got friends in Massachusetts. So it was a good experience. I learned a lot. I mean, would I do it again? I mean, I wouldn't particularly want to, but like I said, I wouldn't. Yeah, I would not. It was definitely it definitely, I think, helped me become a man. Born and raised on a farm in Lawrence County, a long way from there to a rice paddy in Vietnam. Yeah, I mean, it's a culture shock. Yeah. And so I learned a lot.
Nice. Were there any particularly bad memories, like a worst moment that you had over there? Did you guys come under fire?
Oh yeah. I as far as bad memories are concerned, I mean, when you launch, we had a squadron of helicopters that would go from being stationed at one particular ship, and then they'd be stationed with us for a couple, 3 weeks maybe. And they were doing their mission same as we were. And a helicopter would go out, and and they wouldn't come back. And it's like you just talked to them an hour ago, and they're gone. And that's not particularly a fond memory. But there were a lot of situations where we went up on a couple of occasions up the river, and we would have to stop because we knew that on up the river around the bend there was an attack going on. So we didn't want to wade into that, and so we'd sit there and kind of sit there and think, well, we can't turn this boat around because you got to get up to Saigon, and then have a harbor ferry turn you around and come back. So you're kind of sitting duck. Yeah. But and there's that.
Do you remember where you were? Like, were you in Vietnam up until the very end, or?
No. I left in May of '72. The Windham County, as soon as I got off and got out. In fact, I got what was called an early out. I should have stayed through probably December of that year, but I got an early out to go back to school. Said, I promise I'll do better this time.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, well, okay, then we'll let you go back to school. So I got an early out in May to come back to, at that time it was SMS actually. And the boat went on as soon as I got off, it went to Singapore, did some work there, and then was decommissioned. The boat was decommissioned and given to the Greek Navy. And I guess it's still being used by the Greek Navy to be, as a training vessel. So I forget the name of it. They recommissioned it, the Ertle, E-R-T-L-E or something. But it's last time I checked on this has been a couple 3 years ago. It was still in service in the Greek Navy of all places. So but the war, the Vietnam War then of course ended not long after that. It kind of wheels came off, but I was there at the tail end of the war. War, but pretty close to the tail end of the war. It was starting to wind down. Yeah, pretty much.
Was it hard for you to come back and readjust, or when you came back to the States, how did the people back here?
Well,
accept you?
you know, I mean, that was just part of that time. I mean, everybody was mad at it.
Yeah.
You know, you had riots going on. You had, hippies mad at everybody else. The Grey Panthers mad at I mean, it was just a conglomerate. A civil rights movement, of course, was still trying to get traction and get going.
Yeah.
So, I didn't have a particular hard time cycling back in. The one thing that I do remember, and this didn't actually happen from a civilian perspective, but I was transferring back. I was at Treasure Island again. You would, when you were going over, you would go to Treasure Island. They'd take you up to, I think it was March Air Base, March Field, I think was the name of it, Air Force Base. And you'd fly out of there, and then you'd fly back on what's called a MAC, M-A-C, a military air command transport. And when I came back, I was getting ready to leave. I was out, I was done, and I went to a bus depot there at Treasure Island. I had it in my hand to go to home on the Freedom Bird.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was standing there, there were several of us. There was 15 or 20 of us, I guess, that were getting ready to go out. They were going to take to San Francisco Airport. You go to this gate, you go to that gate. And I remember that I was standing there, and here I am, just back in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Had spent 3 or 4 days out processing there at Treasure Island, and I had my dress blues uniform on. And there was this, we had not a drill sergeant, but a chief petty officer who was taking care of us until we got on the bus. And while we were there waiting to get on the bus, he turned to all of us and he said, "Well, the bus is late, so I want you to all go over here and pick up a coffee can and walk around this area here and police the area and pick up all the cigarette butts." And I picked up the can. I thought, that's a hell of a way to treat somebody who just came back from one of your own, particularly a guy in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
I have to take a bunch of guys that just got back from Vietnam, and the last act that they have, the last remembrance that they have of the military service is picking up cigarette butts at a bus stop. So that was that's one of those things that really sticks out. I'd like to go back and find. I mean, he's old then.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably gone, but I want to go back and say, man, what a way to treat a veteran, dude.
Did everybody do it?
Oh yeah, I mean, and I kind of gritted my teeth and I thought, the last thing I need to do is say something stupid and, spend 15, 20, 30 days in the brig over, just pick them up, keep on going, and you're going to be on the plane in a couple of hours.
Nice. What was the first thing you did when you got back home?
I went to the Shady Inn restaurant and
I was just going to ask you what you ate.
I went to the Shady Inn, which is no longer there now. It's now a Bass Pro parking lot over here. But I went to the Shady Inn restaurant, and I sat down and I ordered a prime rib dinner and a big glass of scotch. Exactly what I did. And I ate it all and I drank it all.
It was nice. Your friends, what did they think? What did they think about you signing up to go to the war? Were any of them drafted too?
Oh yeah. I mean, in those days, if you weren't in school with the deferment, you were going to go to service. Yeah. I got lucky and I found someone who, I went. I mean, I screwed up at school and I did pretty good for a couple of semesters, and then I didn't do so well. And I went from being and I'm trying to remember what the deferment was now. It was 4 SH for school, I believe. I can't recall. But I got a letter from SMS on that. I think it was a Wednesday. See ya. Come back later letter. And the following Monday, I had a letter in my mailbox from my draft board saying, "We'd like you to take a physical." Mm-hmm. And so before I got that done, I went and because once you at that time your deferment was gone, you couldn't join a reserve unit. I was very, very lucky to get in a reserve unit because it just shouldn't have happened. In fact, I'll tell you a little story that happened when I knew when I was going up to take my physical that I had that I was in the reserve, because I had, and he's passed away many years ago, but I talked to the guy who was a Navy recruiter here in town. I said, "Can you get me in?" He said, "You're 19, don't know if I can or not." And then he called me and he said, and they used to drill, the Naval Reserve Center used to be over on the campus at Drury.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, come in the back door, raise your right hand, talk fast. And literally, I mean, I just got lucky. Because I did that. I was a member of the United States Naval Reserve. I went to take my physical after I got that letter I was referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was up there with 500 other guys, I don't know, maybe more.
Yeah.
And we were in this huge room, and and I already knew that I was in. I had orders and yada yada, and so they had us all lined up down this big long like a gymnasium, and they said, if you got orders, if you know what you're going to do, you take 3 steps back. Well, I just took 3 steps back. I didn't want to be. And then he said, now those of you that are remaining, I think he was a Marine sergeant, but I can't remember. Might have been in the Army, I don't know. But he walked down the aisle or down the row, and he'd touch every 4th or 5th person. He said, now those of you that I touched, you take 2 steps forward. And they took 2 steps forward. And he said, welcome to the United States Marine Corps. So he knew he needed.
Went through and picked out.
He went through and said, you're in the Marines, you're in the Marines, you're in the Marines. And, that's how that happened. So I was very fortunate to be in the Naval Reserve. Now, I'll tell you one more story about why you never go to Las Vegas with me. I was in radioman school in San Diego, California, and I got a top secret clearance. I got all this stuff done. When I went through school, at the end of radioman A school, you have a graduation ceremony. And we had a grand graduation ceremony, and there were several classes that went through. There were, in my class, there were 67 of us. There were 66 orders for people that were sent to what you would really think of as premium duty, embassy duty, to go to work in these nice, one set of orders to Vietnam. Who do you think of? Never go to Las Vegas with me. I'm the most unlucky person. And I stood there and I looked at these orders and it said the reports in NAVCOM State, Republic of Vietnam, and I just stood there and just laughed out loud.
Yeah.
How can anybody want it? Because you could trade orders. I said, anybody want to trade? And I couldn't get a single taker.
That's bad luck.
It's bad luck.
So you're back from the war now.
Mm-hmm.
Went back to school.
Mm-hmm.
What is your occupation now?
Well, actually, I work here at the university. I've been here. I have been here 23 years and change. I'm in the administration here. I'm also on the faculty. I teach in the communication department. I work in the administrative services department here at the university, and I do a lot of work because of my experience in media. I do a lot of work for Ozarks Public Television, and I do a program called Ozarks Watch, which is kind of a history. We talk to people that are from the area. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of, it's a chronology of the life and culture of the Ozarks. So I've been doing that since '83. Between graduation and '83, I spent a lot of time between '72 and when I actually went back and finished the degree. I spent a lot of time in the radio and TV business. I was in Wichita, Kansas, and I've been all over here in Springfield doing radio and TV. So I got serious with my life about 1983.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About time to buckle
About
down.
time to buckle down. Actually, I came back to finish my degree. I left again the university, but it was under my own, because I wanted to, not because they asked me to. So I had a chance to go out and get in the radio and TV business, and I wanted to do that. And then I came back to get my degree because I knew that I knew I had the GI Bill, and I said, I think at that time, I got like $500 a month. This was 78, 9, and 80, I guess, 79 and 80. And it was like, it was like $500 a month tax free. Well, that's huge money.
Yeah.
So I came back to get the GI Bill, realizing when I got back that I kind of like this, this whole deal. And so, I've been in the education business since '83.
Nice. I didn't know you worked on campus.
Yes, I do.
That's cool. You guys have anything else? Any other questions?
I think to end our interview,
Mhm.
what do you think was the greatest impact of the war on your life? What did you take away the most?
Well, probably I think the greatest impact to me was, war is a horrible thing. It's a shame we can't figure out a way to kind of get through life without having to do this. I think war now is a whole lot different than war was then. We probably got, I don't think there's any question that history will tell you that the Vietnam War was a huge mistake. But politicians like to get into things for reasons that they believe, and rightly or wrong, that they believe are for the greater good. And the longer we bogged down in Vietnam, the more it became clear that there was no way out of that. There was no, there's just no way to do that. I probably learned that, I learned to have a lot of respect for people who are, when they're very young, are called upon to do some things that older men who sit around and make the decisions to send them there to do that probably don't have a realization of why they're doing that. World War, you talk about the Greatest Generation and all that. That was a different deal. That was a direct attack. That made all the sense in the world. We were late getting into that war. We should have probably got in earlier in World War II. But, Vietnam was kind of like, what's the point? What is the point of all this? Because we sure didn't leave a unified Vietnam. We certainly didn't stop communism. We certainly didn't do whatever it is that I think we were supposed to do. And it cost a lot of money, and it cost 50,000 plus lives. And you look at it, what did we gain? I don't think we gained a lot. I think I would have thought we would have learned a lot of lessons from that. I think that's the only thing you can take out of any kind of war or conflict is what have we learned that will keep us from making these same kind of mistakes in the future. Apparently, we haven't learned a whole lot. So that's that's about it. But as far as regrets, I don't have any regrets at all. What else can I do for you?
Is there anything you'd like to share with us? Anything that we haven't touched on?
I don't know what it'd be. Don't think so. But if you want me to come back, I can do that or whatever. I'm just looking here. I actually remembered everything I was supposed to tell you.
We appreciate your time.
Yeah,
That's all right.
thank you so
Very
much.
Yeah, well, good
interesting.
luck on your project.
Giving us a